Welcome everybody to the Missouri Public Transit Association Education Series. So this is a virtual roundtable discussion on vehicle maintenance challenges. My name is Travis Wood, Senior Program Manager at MPTA. And just as a reminder, MPTA members provide more than 60 million rides a day throughout Missouri, employ thousands in our communities. I'd like to welcome, let's see, we've got Dorothy from Oates on, MPTA board member. So thanks for joining us. And Dorothy, I know I saw a blog post that you are celebrating 35 years at Oates, so congratulations. And thank you for everybody for attending today over your lunch hour. Appreciate it. Our goal with today's conversation is to provide an opportunity for you, the professionals, to share your experiences, thoughts, policies, challenges, around vehicle maintenance issues. I know I don't have to tell you, but I'm going to. Vehicle maintenance issues are one of the many challenges that transit providers are facing right now in Missouri and across the country. So from worker shortages to supply chain disruptions, agencies are forced to keep these vehicles in service longer and with fewer staff to maintain them, to say nothing of the impact of evolving technologies, continuous training, and funding needs that present, additional pressures. So to kick things off, I know a few of you have agreed to provide some introductory remarks, but before we do that, I wanted to just give everybody the opportunity to kind of go around and introduce themselves, just so we are all on the same page in case any of us don't know one another. So I will just kind of pick according to my screen. So Dion, if you want to go first.
Yeah, my name is Dion Knepp. I'm the operations director here at Oates Transit.
All right, Jerry.
I'm Jerry Stagman. I'm the interim director here at Jeff City Transit.
All right, Dale, I got you next.
My name is Dale Schaefer. I'm the Chief Mechanical Officer at St. Louis Metro.
All right, Jerry Perryman, I got you next.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Director of Fleet Management here at City Utilities in Springfield. Been with the organization 21 years and just really glad to be a part of the discussion. This is going to be good.
All right, thanks. Matt, you're up.
I'm Fleet Maintenance Manager at KCATA. I've been here getting ready to start my 20th year.
All right. Mackenzie, I got you next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mackenzie. I am the Program and Social Media Associate with MPTA.
All right, Jim.
Jim Hakes, REI, vendor. I hop on these once in a while to keep up to date on your guys' issues.
All right, thanks for joining us. Dorothy, how about you?
I'm Dorothy Yeager, Executive Director here at Oates Transit.
All right, thanks. Tony? All right, Tony, I'm not hearing anything, but we'll work on that. Lou, how about you next?
Lou Tagliaferro, Director of Bus Sales at Central States Bus Sales.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Now that we've got our introductions out of the way, I know a few of you have agreed to give some introductory remarks, which I really appreciate. Again, this is meant to be a discussion amongst you all that I'm going to do my best to not get in the way of, since I am not the expert. I do have some questions should we need to, a little direction to keep us from going too far off the rails. But I think, an overview of your fleets and some of the issues that you're facing, some introductory remarks would be great. So Matt, if you wouldn't mind leading us off and just kind of give us a brief overview from KCATA's perspective.
So we have roughly 230 vehicles that we run. There's 15 flex buses that we run on a fixed route, and then the rest of them are 100% Gillig, and they're roughly 80 large 40-foot buses, and then 30 foots and max buses. Kind of the stuff that we're running into is everybody else. We have parts shortage issues, manpower issues, training issues. We've kind of mitigated some of our collision repair department issues that we're having with parts. We purchased a CNC plasma cutter here about a year ago, so we can build pretty much all of our own body parts that we have. Let's see, the training issues that we have, we've got the Gillig electric buses. We got 2 of those right now. Just going through the growing pains of getting those in the first full year, trying to figure out their little quirks that they have, and just trying to get mechanics hired. Basically, I know it's across the board. The private sector is throwing so much money at these guys that we can't really afford them, unfortunately.
I should probably unmute myself. Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Dion, if you'd like to give a little overview of what Oates is dealing with, that'd be great.
Okay, well, Oates Transit operates in 87 counties in the state of Missouri, providing rural transit service. Currently, our fleet size is 752 vehicles, which consist of a combination of like the Ford E350 cutaways, which is a box-on chassis, the Ford Transits, some minivans, and sedans. Currently, we have about 57% of our fleet that is beyond useful life, whether it be mileage or years. And that continues to grow over the coming years because we have not received any new fleet since May of 2020. So supply issues and of course vehicle availability for new fleet is limited. You know, that useful life is going to continue to grow. And that's going to become a challenge as it relates to the maintenance program here and performing, you know, not only preventive maintenance, but the maintenance repair costs have gone up significantly in the last several years. Supply chain issues is an issue with some of our parts. While you may have a bus that's in service and you're waiting on a $25 part that you can't get, so it basically puts that vehicle out of service and forces you to change your service, change your patterns with your fleet out there to get a vehicle in service. One of the things that is also challenging for us is all our vehicles don't go to a centralized location such as a depot every night. We have vehicles out there that are in the rural areas that drivers take home. They'll depart from home in the morning. So we are very reliant on our drivers to perform those pre-trip and post-trip inspections to maybe catch some issues ahead of time versus before being too late. And with that, you know, I'll just leave it at that. I know we'll get into a few more talking points and challenges, but just kind of an introductory overview of the size of fleet and where Oates operates here in the state of Missouri.
All right, Dion, thanks. Dale, do you want to give us a little overview from Metro's perspective?
All right, thanks, Travis. Yeah, we're a multimodal transportation company. We operate in 6 counties in Missouri and Illinois. Right now, we're down to 290 active buses. Before the pandemic, there was just under 400 buses here. We've lost, due to service cuts, we've parked 99 buses and 16 of our rail cars. We currently are operating 290 active buses, 80 rail cars, and 123 paratransit vans. So for me, we have, like everybody else, have issues with hiring mechanics, but I have to include, and Matt has alluded a little bit to, We deployed in 2020, 24 battery electric buses, 14 Arctics, and 10 40-foot Gillig battery electrics. If I was going to talk about maintenance challenges, any battery electric bus deployment has to be included in that conversation. So it was a challenge, and it continues to be challenging. The reliability is bad, and is much worse on an electric bus than it is on a diesel. And software integration issues have been a huge problem for us between the chargers, 2 different OEMs, and actually charge management systems. So that's been a huge challenge on top of everything else we had going on. For the maintenance department, we are pretty steady at about 25 or 30 mechanics short, which is about 10% of our workforce. But service reductions over the last 2 years haven't left us short-handed maintenance. We need to hire more mechanics, excuse me, and we have difficulty finding mechanics, and the attrition rate is high. But like I said, we parked 99 buses, and the issue for us is operators and getting enough operators in to make service that we have proposed. So we've scaled back over the last 2 years, and we're only putting service out now that we can support with the labor we have. Internally, with all the supply chain disruption going on, in the middle of 2021, St. Louis offered a early retirement, and about 80% of our procurement department retired within 2 months. So, but we're trying to get parts and work through supply chain issues. We had to hire and retrain about all of our buyer planners and a lot of our procurement officers and start from scratch. It took a long time to get them up to speed. And during that time, we were missing a lot of our reorder points, and POs weren't getting filled. Fortunately, for St. Louis, maintenance has a big hand in the parts procedure. So we were able to we write all the specifications and stuff for our components. So we were able to leverage that and a lot of the relationships we personally have with vendors to maybe short track some of those parts. As far as vehicles exceeding their life cycle, we're good. Like I said, we've got 99 buses that are parked. We're working on a new LRV contract to replace some of our outdated LRVs. The biggest issue we had was with cutaways and the supply chain issues with getting chassis to replace our paratransit vehicles. And that was a big challenge. And we're about 1.5 years behind on that replacement schedule, but they're being built right now. So that should be on track here in the next few months. And I'm sure we have a lot of other things to talk about in detail, but that's what I have for introduction. Thanks.
All right, Dale, appreciate that. Why don't we swing over to Jerry at Jeff Tran, give us a little overview of how things are going in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, our maintenance supervisor, Sean Stumpy, was supposed to be on this, but he's actually out chasing down parts today. So that's the reason he's not here. But yeah, we have 12 Gilligs for our fixed routes, and we've got 10 E450 cutaways for our paratransit. We have all but 2 of our Gilligs are past their useful life, and all but 2 of our cutaways are past their useful life. So we have a very old fleet. So our maintenance crew has a very challenging task of keeping them running and getting parts. I know that the parts, we've had several buses down for extended lengths of time. We've had one that's been down for a couple months now waiting on parts. So hopefully we're told that those will be coming in after the first of the year, so we can get we'll have our full fleet up and running again. But it's just been a challenging thing because just like our cutaway buses, we haven't received any new ones since 2017. So that's kind of the situation we're in and what we got.
All right, thanks. How about Jerry with City Utilities? I don't want to leave you left out here. You want to give us a little overview of things with your agency? Maybe in a little bit. So, like I said before, I don't want to necessarily get myself interjected in the conversation too much, because I want this to be an opportunity for everyone to kind of pick each other's brains and see what's going on. But I'm curious to what extent the labor shortage and you know, the mechanics is it disrupting service at all, or is that all on the operator side? You know, to the extent that, you know, you've got vehicles that aren't in service from either labor or parts, you know, is that, you know, impacting service disruptions, or is this all drivers? If anyone wants to jump in on that.
Well,
Well,
here
I
just-
will, go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, well, here, I mean, our maintenance staff is, we've got a pretty good tenured maintenance staff. We're okay for a few more years, but then we've got a few of them that'll be reaching retirement age and stuff there, you know, eligible with the city retirement. So that'll probably cause us problems here in a couple years down the road. But right now, our big thing is just drivers and keeping staff, and actually our bus barn help, the ones that clean and fuel the buses. That's where we're having quite a bit of issue as well. Just can't get anybody to take care of that. And then we're having to use drivers to clean and fuel the buses. So that takes, you know, takes drivers out of a seat. So, you know, and it's just an ongoing issue that as soon as you get one, you lose another. So that's kind of where we're at with things.
I just want to say here at Oates Transit, you know, we do struggle with filling driver position. Operator shortage is a challenge. Sometimes that challenge is a little more difficult in certain other areas of the state. We cover a large area. So some areas of the state, you know, we don't have a shortage, and then several other areas we do. And that's an ongoing problem because it does impact service. It requires those regions out there in those areas to really look at the service that they currently provide and make adjustments in order to just get a button seat and get somebody out there. Part of the challenge too that we have is, while we don't really struggle right now with mechanics, not all of our 8 regions have a mechanic in-house, but the ones that do has a mechanic on staff. Where we really have a challenge is we rely on outside vendors. When we cover 87 counties in Missouri, we rely on those outside vendors to work on our fleet out in those rural counties. And sometimes that can be a challenge. And it really becomes a challenge when it comes to parts and their ability to work on our vehicle in a timely manner.
I guess, what about the rest of you, just in terms of labor shortage? You know, how much is that impacting your mechanics, and then how does that compare to, you know, the driver shortage?
Ours is mainly drivers. The problem that we are seeing is we'll get 40 new hires for drivers, and by the time that the program's all said and done with, you might have 5 or 6 that have graduated the program. Now our mechanics, we have shifted focus from diesel mechanics to automotive mechanics, because there's so much diagnostics that have to go into it. The automotive mechanics pick that up right off the bat, even though they probably never worked on a diesel motor before. We have a majority of our mechanics are over 6 years here. We only here recently have hired on another 5. So we have an incentive for them to train the new employees while they're on probation. So kind of once they get out of that probationary period, they're really good about sitting around talking about issues that they're finding. This is what we're seeing on on these certain series of buses. Just here, oh, probably about a month ago, somebody came up, and it sounds ridiculous, but our SCRs, they're $18,000 a piece if we can get them. They said they found a YouTube video that, oh, you just soak them in Dawn soap overnight and then rinse them out real good. And I said, $18,000, I'll try a $2 bottle of Dawn soap. And we've had it on the road for a month and a half, 2 months now, and had zero problems out of that bus. And so going forward, that's what we're kind of going to go with.
At Travis in St. Louis, the issue is, it is a challenge with being short on mechanics, but the major stressed issue is short operators, and lack of operators have caused the service reduction. Now, if we were still fully in our full service we had in 2019, we'd definitely be way short on mechanics, but we continue to look for mechanics, look for new ways to attract mechanics, sign-on bonuses and referral bonuses for current employees, things like that. But it's a challenge. Like Matt said earlier, I mean, the opportunities in this current environment for a skilled mechanic can go somewhere and get a high-paying job, and generally with days and weekends off, and it's something we can't offer starting out. So this is going to be a long-term problem. We're looking for long-term solutions, and it's not really over the last year and a half, we haven't seen much improvement on the labor issues here.
Sure. All right. The next kind of direction I was thinking about was supplies and parts. You know, a number of you mentioned issues with getting what you need. Before we hop into that, Jerry at City Utilities, if you can hear me, did you want to give a little overview of how things are going for you all in terms of fleet maintenance, labor shortages, et cetera?
I will. Yeah, I apologize that it just dropped the meeting, so I had to restart everything. So I missed out on probably the last 5 minutes or so. So forgive me if I repeat something or make like I didn't hear it, I just didn't hear it. But yeah, our fleet is about really 720 assets. You understand we're a utility company, and so we take care of much larger scope than just transit. But in transit, we're 27 fixed route buses and 6 paratransit cutaway buses. 2 of our buses were refurbished buses purchased from CCW. They're in our contingency fleet. They would be past their useful life. But everything else is in pretty good shape in the transit side, where we just recently went out to replace went out to bid to replace the paratransit buses. And then on the whole fleet side, we run about 14% past our replacement cycle. So I feel like our fleet's in pretty good shape, but that's because my predecessor that worked with me back in 2013, we made a concerted effort to really get our fleet brought up to speed then. And so we've been able to do some things to do that. So I'm thankful for that. It sounds like we face some similar challenges with the supply chain, labor force reduction, and a lack thereof, and all that. We are fully staffed. We have 27 shop personnel, 4 management staff. We have 2 full-time body technicians, and we have 3 different shops. But we have retirements coming up, and it has been difficult at times to hire mechanics. One thing that I'm trying to work on that may be of benefit, and if it's mentioned someone else is doing it, then I just didn't hear it, but I'm trying to work with a local technical community college, OTC, here in town to really do like a homegrown mechanic kind of approach, where we would hire co-ops or interns with the view that in 3 to 5 years they would be at a mechanic first year kind of level as they go through trade school there. I graduated from there. I started at the utility as a mechanic and worked on buses primarily. But really that homegrown approach, that's not a short-term solution, that's a long-term solution. So it doesn't help you out in the immediate time frame. But I think it is something to build relationships with technical schools and start making those connections where you have your eye on some young prospective mechanics to be able to work into a relationship and career with your area. So that's something maybe to think about. But that gives you a scope of where we're at. We seek to hire mechanics that do everything. We don't have ABC level mechanics. Any of our mechanics are required to do the most minor maintenance to the heaviest repair on a variety of things: cranes, backhoes, excavators, boats, buses, passenger cars and trucks, mowers, stationary pumps and generators, everything. So I want the best mechanics in this area to work for us. That's tough in and of itself, but that's the kind of business that we do. So we have to be able to fabricate, we have to be able to weld, we have to be able to know some machining things. But that maybe comes into play a little later on the supply chain issues where somebody mentioned, I think Mr. Gonder, if I got the name right, mentioned making body parts. And that's something that we have done as well, is fabricating fenders and things that we couldn't get. And so that's helpful when you have that scope of skill, but that's what we're trying to do. It's getting harder to keep that though, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for that update. And just to throw out there, I know MPTA, one of our, guiding forces this coming year, is looking at a statewide apprentice program, from the driver perspective, but as well as the mechanics, and try and have, a program that can help generate candidates and some standardization to training, statewide. So definitely looking for everyone's feedback as we, continue to work with community colleges in the state to kind of act as a feeder, like you were mentioning, Jerry. You don't have to talk about this, but I'm curious when it comes to parts. Matt, I know you've mentioned looking at, building body parts in-house. Jerry, you've got Sean out trying to get parts today. I'm kind of curious, obviously this is one of those things that's changed in the last few years, how hard it is to get parts, and I'm sure how much they cost when you can get them. I guess if anyone wants to speak to maybe some of the outside the box solutions that you've had to employ, or differences that you're seeing now versus, a few years ago when it comes to parts. And I mean, do you have long-term contracts that are kind of making it difficult to get what you need? What does that look like?
Well, one of the steps that we're taking here at Oates, as it relates to our fleet, we have a lot of vehicles that are getting very old, and maybe we didn't do this so much in the past, but we're really looking at it hard now. Is when a vehicle gets to a state of disrepair and it's just not, we can't fix it, we're cannibalizing those vehicles and utilizing those parts that we need for future use. That's hasn't always been the case, but getting all we can off those vehicles certainly does benefit Oates in the short term versus waiting for a part that may take months to get.
Yeah, one of the notes that Sean left me here was some of their outside the box thinking there for parts, because they've been on eBay, Amazon, going to these aftermarket, parts places, different things, and just trying to any place they can think of to look for parts when the regular dealerships or auto supply stores don't have what they need.
Sure.
I would echo what those two gentlemen said. We've also just tried to be creative. A lot of parts are not made to repair anymore, but we have found some success, depending on the part, actually taking it apart and repairing it. So whether it's a circuit board solder connection, or whether it's a pump housing that you creatively take apart and put back together, it's worth at least trying. And you may find that if you can spend the time to investigate it and just give the mechanics some freedom to do a little research and development, I don't know, we've probably had, maybe a third of the things we've tried to play with like that, we've actually been able to limp it along. I like the dish soap idea on the particulate, or the SCR. That's an interesting concept. I think playing around with stuff like that, what do you have to lose if you don't have the part, right? So Also remaining in really good contact with the vendors that supply those parts, because they get updated information for retrofits and other options on a different component that might be able to be utilized if it's configured a little different. So those would be the two things hopefully you find helpful.
Anybody else want to jump in on parts, how you're getting them, how you're making them?
Yeah, echo everything everyone said. We're everything we can to do to get the parts. We have a pretty good team of buyer planners that search the internet, go through different vendors. We've had to alter as far as SCRs and DPFs. We've gone through and looked at other vendors other than Cummins to get the parts. We've tried to extend a lot of our intervals. We had planned maintenance intervals to replace all these parts, and we've looked at extending a lot of this, so the consumption of these parts is much lower than we had originally had anticipated. So things like that. And again, we have a plasma cutter on order, and we've been using a laser jet for quite some time, and a water jet for quite some time to make panels and things like that. And this plasma cutter should even speed that process up for us. And we do as much as we can internally to create parts. We've got front caps have always been a long lead time issue. We purchased the molds, and we are now spraying our own fiberglass and making our own front and rear caps and a lot of the fiberglass components. And internally, the mechanics are really excited about learning new skill sets like this. So yeah, as much as we can to keep the parts flowing, is what we do. And meetings like this, again, yeah, the dish soap, hadn't heard of that. We may give that a try too if we get into a bind.
Hey Dale, something to add to that. We use a vendor in town, and we had them create our own molds because at the time we couldn't buy them. So we started doing corner sections to where it go to the number one door halfway over into the washer arm door. And that's been awesome for us to swap out, because it usually doesn't take out, well, for us anyways, it usually doesn't take out a whole front cap whenever we get in a collision.
It seems like anymore with the Gilligs, the front cap, at least one corner.
Yeah.
I believe the original molds that we got came from Kansas City, so maybe the same,
Probably the same
vendor. So yeah, but we'll make complete front caps, but a lot of times we'll make a cut front cap and then cut it and piece in the lower section or left or right. But it certainly does eliminate, saves a lot of labor on a pretty big job.
Oh yeah.
You know, conversations about these specific parts, I mean, I'm curious to what extent you all have different procedures in terms of, you know, surveillance of your vehicles and trying to predict when something's going to fail. I mean, obviously, the understanding that these certain types of vehicles, XYZ, usually fails at this point. I mean, do you have detailed records? Do you have something, you know, as far as technology that is, you know, surveillance on vehicles that can kind of give you an indicator? Or I know, Dion, you talked about inspections being, you know, important to kind of keep a track of that. So I guess, what do you all do to try to get out in front of some of these repairs before something goes out of service?
Well, we have implemented 20 years ago an RCM program where we do a lot of predictive maintenance, and we learned this through data mining for like vehicles. So if you go back through your maintenance history and part failures, you can pretty much narrow down, if you use OEM parts and not aftermarket and things like, if you maintain the part quality, you can pretty much predict failures, which increases reliability of the vehicle. And when you can do that, also you can control your operations cost. It really helps a lot more with labor than parts cost of anything, because eventually this starter alternator is going to fail. And if you rebuild it before it fails or replace it before it fails, what you've saved is a lot of labor. So, but what else it does, it helps a lot to predict. So for quite some time, we've been able to, and in our program, every 50,000 miles, there's a maintenance interval where a lot of the major components are checked or replaced. And you can plan your parts usage out. We can go 18 months. Doesn't mean we can get it, but if our mileage stabilizes, and at the, a few years ago, our buses were running 54,000 miles a year. So you can plan, and we use the M5 maintenance system. We could plan pretty closely when these major intervals were going to take place, and through the supply chain issues, when you can pre-plan as much predictive maintenance as you can, it certainly helps. It's not a fix-all for everything. I think we still got a bus waiting for an ECM that's been down for since early this year, waiting for an ECM. So we still have issues with electronic parts, as everyone else does. But it seems to have softened the supply chain blow for us.
Anybody else want to jump in on the preventative maintenance, trying to surveillance, keep track of repairs before they get to your attention because of a bad situation?
Well, we can run reports. We will, we've always believed in a really rigorous maintenance protocol because of the reliability of utility vehicles and transit vehicles. So we actually maintain, we exceed the manufacturer's recommendation. We do it a little more often. That can be debated on useful life, but I remember being a mechanic and we running 97 and 2000 model year New Flyers as long as 18 years. And it seems like if you just take really good care of stuff, it lasts a lot longer. And when the money dries up, those assets are still able to be asked for a little more than maybe originally planned. But as far as keeping track of things and looking to the future, I don't know how many other folks do this, but we will do the oil sampling, and we monitor that chemistry really close. That's saved us a couple of times. We will have in-frame rebuilds scheduled on a power plant that, to my knowledge, doesn't even have that from Cummins, the L9. But we do have that scheduled currently at 400,000 miles. So I think that rigorous maintenance view, there is some advantage in the predictive maintenance and repair that Mr. Schaefer mentioned. We will do that on assets in the utility that are assets that we cannot have fail. So our backup stationary generation for our trunk radio system, for the water treatment, backup pumps where electricity's off, but we've got to have water pressure. Those kind of assets get predictive maintenance because we just cannot have them go down. They are the backup to the backups. So, but as far as just that view of maintaining everything really, really well, I think has helped us a lot.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add to the preventative maintenance discussion? I guess I'm curious, Dale, I know you mentioned how many buses you have parked and I don't know how many others are in this situation, but is there an effort, like, are you cycling these out to try to reduce mileage? I mean, is there any, strategy there to try to reduce mileage or wear and tear in vehicles because you do have a driver shortage and service disruptions that maybe there's more vehicles available?
Well, at this time, we are in a really good place, unlike some of my peers here, where we had a vehicle replacement plan and it was up to date when all this happened. So we're on a 15-year replacement schedule, and we're replacing 1/15 of the fleet. Currently, the 99 buses are our newer buses. We've got buses running out there that we need to push up to 500,000 miles because if this never recovers, these buses are going to have to be sold. And once they get to meet the minimum requirement, then we're starting to integrate the other vehicles back into the fleet. But we don't want to, if this doesn't recover, we don't want to be stuck here with 99 buses sitting there and have to explain to the FTA about our spare ratio. So
Sure.
we need to get as many vehicles up to the minimum replacement cycles we can. So yes, we are recycling as we possibly can. The paratransit side, like I said, we are way behind. We have cutaways that have over 600,000 miles on them that the supply chain disrupted Ford, and we're several years past getting them replaced, but that's should be taken care of here pretty soon. And I wanted to touch on a point that Jerry said too, something that we've just learned. He's talking about oil sampling. I think most transit companies do that as well, but we've been using Restore Oil in cooperation as a test with Valvoline, and it's an additive that our issues with our engines were carbon. Rings would stick, and at about 400 to 500,000 miles, we'd start getting blow by on these ISL engines. This Restore Oil is used 1 out of every 5 oil changes, and it's a high detergent designed to clean this up. We just sent our product team down to Kentucky to meet with Valvoline and go over the results of this 2-year study. And it really looks like all the valve guide wear, cylinder wear, we had 3% cylinder wear at 500,000 miles. There's no issues with rings sticking, and it looks like this Restore Oil is doing what it's designed to do. And we could be really potentially looking at not doing any rebuilds on our engines for the life of the bus. We think it could go 500,000 to 600,000 miles without any issues coming up. So it's something that was a surprise to me, and this is a huge cost savings if this is actually true.
All right, one thing I wanted to touch on too is, you know, it was mentioned early on, I think Dale, you mentioned it, and you know, everyone's at a, you know, little different track as far as this goes, but as far as, you know, electrification of your fleet or alternative fuels, you know, you mentioned issues with reliability. I mean, can you all speak to maybe that side of things as far as wherever you are now and where you're planning in terms of reliability and what that means, you know, for your mechanics and maintenance, and in terms of, you know, just training and cost and everything that, you know, kind of goes into these, you know, technology advances as we look to the next few years. Whoever wants to jump in there.
I know we're waiting on to hear about a grant right now strictly for a new electric bus build, plus the additional training that would go with that. And then we were looking at potentially having a mechanic from the bus builder come and stay with us for a whole year. That way they could in-house train. As far as reliability, we haven't had too many troubles up until here recently. We've had issues with the coolant leak or potential coolant leaks in the batteries, which once we heard about that, they were taken off property onto our whole lot, away from every asset that we have, just because of their catastrophic failure that they could have. In the summer, we were getting down to 1.16, I think we hit 1.4 at one time, kilowatts per mile, which was amazing. But as soon as they started with their updates, the road ready stuff, it kind of seemed started dipping back down to the 1 1.9s, 1.8s, somewhere around there. Now we haven't had any charging issues at all, which was pretty nice to hear from other people. For us, we use ChargePoint and we use the Veracity program right now because we only have 2 buses. I'm interested to see what your charge management system is, Dale, because I know we have 3 more that we're buying that we'll be receiving at the end of 23, and then 24 we're scheduled to get 8 more. So not looking forward to that, but
And I would recommend you stick with ChargePoint.
okay.
If you don't have issues, we use the Mobility House for the charge management system and ABB chargers. And both companies have software that they didn't want to share with each other that could have solved a lot of our problems a long time ago. But they just wouldn't communicate and work down. And you get the 3-way finger pointing between the bus manufacturer, the charger, and the charge management system. And it would take, any issue would take months to work out. So I'd stick with ChargePoint, and we're actually expanding. We have funds secured for 12 more for our inner city garage over the next 3 years. And I'm looking heavily at ChargePoint or any system that has charge management built in with the charger, same system, not piecemealing the system together and try and make it work.
Dion, I'm curious as far as, Oates with a fleet that's, covering so much of the state and obviously, covering a lot of miles out there, to what extent is, electrification something that you all are involved in or planning for, and what does that look like in terms of, charging and charging stations?
Well, it's something that we do not currently have, but we are looking into it. But some of the big challenges that I potentially see is that a lot of our buses, our drivers in the rural area take those buses home. So how do those get charged? Maybe we do, a pilot program where we're here in Columbia and we send out a few buses or we apply for buses or purchase buses here in Columbia and house them right here. We just haven't got to that point yet. And I know that it's the direction that we must go because that's where some of the federal money is. That's the direction that it appears that FTA is steering us to make it readily available. So, but at this point, we are not there yet. Do we anticipate going there? Possibly, yes, but we're just not there yet. But it will be a challenge as it gets out into those rural settings. The more and more you have of that.
Sure.
And it's really, I'm interested to see, right off the get-go, I think it was Dale or somebody had mentioned, all the challenges with battery and electric fleet. That's certainly a concern when you're not there yet.
The Jerry's, do you have anything to add to the electrification discussion?
Well, here in Jeff City, we're kind of at a constraint with doing the electric. We are hopefully maybe by the end of the week, get a purchase order going for 2 Gillick hybrids. We've been in the process of that for the last several months and hopefully getting them officially ordered here in a real quick near future. Our biggest constraint is our facilities. And we've done a facilities study and things there. We've sent some stuff to the FTA, trying to work on trying to maybe come up with a new facility. Of course, that's several years down the road, but that would be our big constraint as far as going electric. Where our facilities is located now, it would take to get the infrastructure and everything here for electric. We just don't have the space here at our facility or the electricity running here to do it. So, but yeah, we're looking at stuff like that. You know, our plans are down the road, if we can get a new facility, to at least try to get half our fleet to be electric and maybe the other half hybrid. We're not real sure. And in the same way, even with our paratransit vehicles, looking at some of that, because what we run, the electric vehicles would maybe a decent option for us, because we're having, we can't get, you know, the Ford E450 chassis, you can't hardly get a hold of them. You know, so we're looking at other size vehicles, some smaller vehicles. I know Oates runs a lot of the high top vans. We've tried to get a hold of a couple of them. Haven't had any luck yet, and even some smaller minivans, you know, but they have the new ones on that haven't got the Buy America waiver for the minivan, for the ADA minivans yet. So hopefully we can get through that, and that should help us out with some of our stuff, but it all takes time.
Sure.
One thing I wanted to mention here at Oates, and possibly ask a question to the rest of you, and what I wanted to mention too, as it relates to electric, you know, there is a cost there. The initial cost is pretty, very expensive, you know, to make that transition. So, and that becomes a challenge too, for our company. But a lot of our service is paratransit type vehicles and the Ford Transits. Do any of you have electric vehicles with that type of service vehicle? From what I'm hearing, a lot of your electric is with your big buses, your large buses, on fixed route service. Do you have any electric vehicles as it relates to paratransit?
We don't. We have looked into them, but as far as I know, they haven't been on the table for a discussion of if we were going to purchase them or not.
Dion St. Louis does not at this time, but St. Clair County, which we manage their vehicles as well in Illinois, has some on order. So it's about to begin in the paratransit world in our Illinois garage, probably in the next year and a half.
City Utilities does not have any in that application. I don't think I mentioned earlier, but we have two EV 35-foot Gilligs. We use ABB as well, charging. We have had some issues with those. And then we have two Hyundai Konas that have worked very well. We've got two more of those on order for a different department. But if I was to look in that space, I think I would seriously consider the possibility of using the Ford Transit or Transit Connect, if you're able to do that.
All right, I think one of the things I wanted to touch on, and I'll be respectful of your time, we've got a few more minutes here, is just, you know, to what extent, you know, is funding and funding levels, you know, impacting your vehicle procurement and kind of turning over these vehicles. Obviously, there's the supply chain issues and just the difficulty in getting what you need, but, you know, our funding levels, whether it's state, federal funding levels and access, to what extent is that impacting you know, procuring new vehicles and planning for the future there and helping with, you know, current maintenance issues that you have?
I would say challenges here at Oates. Oates is a little bit different than maybe the rest of you, is that we rely on the state of Missouri to procure those vehicles. What I see as a big challenge is we've had several years where there hasn't been any new vehicles, and, you know, Oates could really use 200, probably 200 buses. And as many of you know, the cost has increased significantly in the last couple of years. What was, you know, a cutaway now, what we're told is $110,000. You know, we are required for 20% match to that federal money. So that becomes pretty significant to Oates Transit when you need 200 vehicles. So that is a challenge too, is that the cost of these vehicles and the match required to get them, you know, that's a challenge.
Anybody else have anything to add, I guess, to the the funding discussion, or, just, your internal budget, and to the extent that procuring vehicles and maintenance issues, how that's impacting things compared to how it has been the last few years. Anybody?
Well, it seems like I can't budget enough early enough to keep up.
Sure.
I think maintaining a really good relationship with finance, whoever the decision maker is in the budgeting process for who decides on your capital dollars, is critical. In my opinion, communicating the value of what a new fleet provides and staying up with those replacement cycles is pretty critical to the decision making at that level. We don't operate in a system that bills the departments back. I budget for all the repair and maintenance and the capital replacement dollars for everyone except for transit. They're the only exception to that. I run projects in their budget, but don't actually have those funds directly in my budget. So some folks, if you're billing back, I'm not quite sure how other transits would operate, but it's communicating that value to make sure that they understand that if you don't stay up with that, it's going to cost you more later, even though prices are really high now.
All right. Anybody else have any final words on that, or any other topics that we touched on today?
No, just here at Jeff City, we got the same thing like Oates. We go off the state contracts, for MoDOT and stuff there. And, it's the same thing as haven't been able to get anything, and it's what's on our contract. So we're kind of limited, what to do. I think as far as money wise, I think we're in decent shape. It's just the fact that we have nothing to spend it on. So it's getting spent on other projects. But yeah, at some point, if we don't come up with other vehicles, we're really going to be in tough shape here in the next couple of years.
Sure. All right, well, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join in the conversation today. As a reminder, we recorded it so you can watch it again as many times as you want to glean all that useful information. Matt, thank you for making me feel better about looking at YouTube whenever I need to figure out how to fix something. It does come in handy. Go ahead. On the note of the MPTA education series, so this is a resource for our members. I'm still working on scheduling out the rest of these for the rest of the year. So if you all or your colleagues have any topics that you're just dying to have another roundtable discussion on, or maybe a speaker, present some information on, please give me a call, send me an email, and look at our mopublictransit.org website, because we'll be continuing to publicize those. So thank you for your time today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch.